She walked in late, shaking and terrified, expecting to lose the biggest opportunity of her life. Then Vincent Caruso looked at her once and shut down a multi-million-dollar meeting. But he did not stop it because she was beautiful. He stopped it because someone had gone to dangerous lengths to place her in that room. Minutes earlier, Claire Bennett had been running through a New Orleans storm. Her dress soaked her hands, trembling, and one thought repeating in her mind: do not let one terrible morning erase 8 years of hard work. She believed the men behind those glass doors would judge her for arriving late. She had no idea they were already deciding whether she was a witness, a weapon, or the next person who needed protection. Stay until the end, because this story reveals what happens when power meets a woman who refuses to surrender her voice, like the video and comment where you are watching from. But before Claire Bennett stood beneath Vincent Caruso's stare, before 18 powerful people watched her enter that room soaked and trembling. There had been 47 minutes of rain, bad timing, and small disasters that felt painfully ordinary. At 8:13 that morning, Claire stood beneath a broken streetcar shelter on Canal Street and watched water rise over the curb. The storm had arrived before sunrise. It rolled inland from the Gulf and settled over New Orleans like a warning no one had taken seriously enough. Rain fell in hard silver sheets, flattening palm fronds against brick walls and turning the street into a river of brake lights, umbrellas, and impatient horns. Claire held her leather portfolio beneath her coat. Her own shoulders could get wet. The documents could not. A red streetcar sat motionless 2 blocks away, its interior lights glowing through the rain. Passengers had already begun stepping off and opening umbrellas. Somewhere farther down the line, an electrical failure had stopped service in both directions. Claire checked her phone. The meeting began at 9. Her first rideshare driver had canceled after 7 minutes. The second driver had accepted the trip, moved half a block, then remained frozen on the map before turning in the opposite direction. She requested a third. The screen showed a wait of 18 minutes. Claire closed her eyes. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." A woman beside her glanced over, then quickly looked away. Claire opened the assignment email again, though she had already memorized every visible line. Crescent Global Language Services, confidential executive negotiation, English and Spanish, maritime logistics. 3-day assignment, location Rivermark Tower, required arrival 8:45, client name withheld until arrival. She had received the offer at 12:14 that morning. Her phone had vibrated on the nightstand while she was asleep, and Rebecca Lane had called less than a minute later. "We need a senior Spanish interpreter for a priority assignment," Rebecca had said. Claire had sat up still, half asleep. "When 9 this morning? That is less than 9 hours away, I know. What happened to the scheduled interpreter?" "She became unavailable. Unavailable how, I do not have the details." Claire had looked at the dark window of her apartment. Rain had only just begun tapping against the glass. What industry? Maritime transportation and international distribution. What type of negotiation? Contract finalization. Do you have the drafts I am sending them now? Claire had opened the email while Rebecca remained on the line. More than 200 pages of supporting material were attached. Most of the company names were blacked out. Several sections of the contract were missing. The terminology sheet contained port access, language, customs procedures, cargo insurance, labor, obligations, and cross-border liability. "This is not enough preparation time," Claire had said. "I know. Who requested me?" A pause followed. "You were the highest cleared interpreter available. That does not answer the question." "Claire, the fee is 3 times your normal executive rate." Claire had remained silent. Rebecca knew exactly what that meant. 3 times her normal rate would cover the transmission repair on Claire's car. It would also cover next month's rent and the medical bill sitting unopened on her kitchen counter. More importantly, an assignment at this level could change the category of work Crescent Global offered her. For 8 years, Claire had interpreted labor disputes, depositions, federal mediations, immigration hearings, medical conferences, and corporate negotiations. She had worked inside rooms where men with expensive watches argued over numbers larger than the budgets of small cities. She was good at the work, better than good. She could hear when a speaker softened an obligation in one language and strengthened it in another. She understood how silence could function as pressure. She knew that the word reasonable was rarely simple inside a contract, and that an interpreter who added certainty where none existed could alter an entire negotiation. Yet she was still treated as someone who might be impressive one day, not now, one day. 3 years earlier, she had completed an 11-hour federal mediation involving a warehouse injury claim and a Spanish-speaking family. The attorneys had praised her accuracy during the session. Afterward, a senior partner named Charles Whitmore had asked to speak with her in the hallway. "You handled the terminology well," he had said. "Thank you. Your delivery was clear." Claire had waited. There was always a word after clear, but he said at this level clients also expect command presence. Claire had looked at him. "What does that mean?" Charles adjusted his cufflinks. "You are technically capable. No one is questioning that. You simply do not fill the room yet." Claire had been 28. She had worn a gray suit she could barely afford, and shoes that had left blood along the backs of both heels. She had spent 2 nights preparing technical vocabulary that none of the attorneys had bothered to review. She had interpreted every insult, every concession, every hesitant apology, and every legal warning without once losing the speaker's meaning. Still, Charles had looked at her and seen someone too quiet to be trusted with power. Claire had not argued. She had gone home, placed his written evaluation in the bottom drawer of her desk, and accepted every difficult assignment she could find. She studied maritime law because the vocabulary intimidated other interpreters. She learned the language of cargo damage, force majeure customs holds, freight forwarding, and port authority compliance. She listened to regional Spanish from Mexico, Colombia, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and the Gulf Coast until she could hear the difference between a legal term and a local habit. She became the person agencies called when a document was already causing trouble. Still, Charles Whitmore's words lived somewhere inside her. "You do not fill the room yet." At 12:30 that morning, Claire had accepted the assignment. She worked at her kitchen table until 2:12, surrounded by legal pads and cold coffee. She built a glossary by hand because writing the terms helped fix them in her memory. Exclusive access, commercially reasonable effort, material breach, documented notice, customs indemnity, temporary suspension. She slept for 3 hours, dressed before sunrise, and left her apartment with enough time to arrive 40 minutes early. Then her car refused to shift out of park. Now she stood beneath a leaking shelter with rain soaking through the shoulders of her coat while the third rideshare driver canceled. Claire called Rebecca. The line rang 4 times. Crescent Global Rebecca answered. "It is Claire. Are you at the tower? Number streetcar service is down, and 3 drivers have canceled. You need to be there by 8:45. I understand what arrival time means. This client is extremely particular. Most clients become particular when enough money is involved." Rebecca was quiet for half a second. "This is not most clients." Claire looked at the assignment email again. "Who is the client? I cannot disclose that over the phone. You assigned me to a confidential negotiation in the middle of the night. My name is not on the building access email. The contract is incomplete. I think I have earned the company name." Another pause. "Caruso Maritime Holdings." Claire stopped breathing for a moment. A bus moved through the flooded intersection, spraying water across the sidewalk. Everyone in New Orleans knew the Caruso name. Some knew it from river terminals and freight yards. Caruso Maritime controlled storage facilities, trucking contracts, private docks, and distribution routes stretching from Louisiana to Texas. Others knew the name from stories that were never printed. Judges who changed schedules without explanation. Union disputes that ended overnight. Dock supervisors who disappeared after stealing from the wrong account. A nightclub owner who had publicly insulted Vincent Caruso, then sold his property 2 weeks later and moved to Arizona. Nothing was ever proven. Nothing needed to be. Claire lowered her voice. "You could have mentioned that before I accepted. You would have said no. I might have. And we needed someone who would say yes." Claire stared at the rain. "What happened to the original interpreter? I told you she became unavailable." "How? I do not know. Who specifically requested me?" Rebecca exhaled. "You were selected from the available clearance list." "By you." A longer silence. "Claire, get to the building." The call ended. Claire looked at the dark screen. Rebecca had answered 3 questions without answering any of them. A yellow cab moved slowly through traffic. Claire stepped into the rain and raised her arm. The driver passed her. Another followed. She ran toward the corner, shoes splashing through water that covered the pavement. A taxi stopped at the light. Claire knocked on the passenger window. The driver lowered it an inch. "Rivermark Tower," she said. "Poydras Street. I will pay double." The man looked at the water, then at the traffic. "You will pay before we move." "Fine." She climbed into the back seat. The car smelled like coffee-wet upholstery and pine air freshener. Claire gave him cash. The driver counted it while the light turned green. A horn sounded behind them. He raised one hand toward the rear window and finally moved. Claire checked the time. 8:27. 23 minutes until she was expected upstairs. 33 until the meeting began. She opened the contract on her tablet and reviewed the glossary again. The English draft used commercially reasonable in 4 places. The Spanish draft used razonablemente commercial in 2 sections and comercialmente viable in another. Not identical. She marked the phrase. The taxi reached the next intersection and stopped. Traffic filled every lane. A police vehicle blocked part of Poydras Street. 2 emergency workers stood in water near a stalled delivery truck. Rain beat against the windshield so hard that the city beyond it dissolved into gray shapes. Claire leaned forward. "Can you take Camp Street flooded? What about Baronne blocked near Giraud?" The driver tapped the steering wheel. "You picked a bad morning." Claire nearly laughed. "I noticed." 8:34. She sent Rebecca a message. "Traffic stopped near Poydras. I am en route. Estimated arrival 8:52. No reply came. Claire checked the building route. Rivermark Tower was less than a mile away. The taxi moved 6 feet, stopped, moved again. 8:38. She imagined the conference room. Executives entering with dry coats, lawyers opening prepared folders, the interpreter's chair sitting empty, someone looking at a clock, someone asking where she was. She felt Charles Whitmore's old evaluation unfolding inside her mind. Technically capable, does not fill the room. Claire pressed her palms against her knees. "You prepared the language," she whispered. The driver glanced at her through the mirror. What nothing? 8:42. The taxi remained trapped. Claire looked through the rain at the top of Rivermark Tower in the distance. The building rose above the surrounding blocks, dark glass disappearing into the storm. She gathered her portfolio. "Pull over." The driver looked back. "Here I can walk faster. In this rain, I do not have time to wait for better weather." He stopped beside the curb. Claire opened the door. The storm hit her immediately. Cold water slid beneath her collar. Wind pulled at her coat. She stepped into ankle-deep water and nearly lost one shoe. The driver called through the open door. "Lady, you paid double, then have a good morning." She closed the door and ran. Her heels struck the pavement unevenly. She crossed one street, then another. A delivery truck sent a wave of dirty water across her calves. Claire kept moving. The tower remained 6 blocks away. Her phone vibrated inside her portfolio. Rebecca. Claire answered while running beneath an awning. "Where are you 6 blocks away? The session team is already upstairs." "I know. They called twice." "Tell them I am coming. I told you this client does not tolerate mistakes." Claire stopped under the awning. Rainwater ran down her face. "This is not a mistake. It is a storm. To them, the difference may not matter." Claire looked toward the tower. "Then they can decide after I arrive." She ended the call. At the next corner, a black SUV accelerated through a deep pool of water. Claire saw it too late. The tires struck the flooded gutter. A wall of brown water rose beside her. It hit from her knees to her waist, soaking the lower half of her dress and spotting the blue portfolio pressed against her chest. Claire stood perfectly still. The SUV continued without slowing. For one terrible second, the city seemed to go silent around her. Her dress clung to her legs. Her right heel was scratched. Her hair had come loose from the clip at the back of her head. She could taste rain on her lips. Claire looked at her reflection in the dark window of a closed restaurant. She no longer looked like an interpreter arriving for a multi-million-dollar negotiation. She looked like someone who had lost a fight with the entire city. Her eyes burned. She thought of turning around. She could call Rebecca and say the conditions made arrival impossible. She could go home, take a shower, place the prepared glossary beside the other work no one would ever see, and tell herself that the opportunity had been badly timed. No one could reasonably blame her. The thought offered relief for less than 3 seconds. Then she pictured the empty interpreter's chair. She imagined an executive asking why Crescent Global had sent someone who could not arrive on time. She imagined Charles Whitmore hearing the story and nodding as if the morning had proven him right. Claire opened her portfolio. The papers inside were dry. 6 pages of handwritten terms. Hours of work. 8 years of work. She closed the portfolio. Do the job, she told her reflection. Then she stepped back into the rain. By the time she reached Rivermark Tower, her lungs hurt. A wide stone awning protected the entrance. Black vehicles lined the curb. Men in dark suits stood near the revolving doors, speaking quietly into concealed microphones. Claire slowed. One of the men looked at her. His gaze moved from her wet dress to the temporary assignment email on her phone. "I am here for the Caruso Maritime Negotiation," she said. "Name, Claire Bennett. Interpreter." He checked a tablet. "You are not on the list. My agency confirmed the assignment at midnight." "What agency? Crescent Global Language Services." The man searched again. Nothing changed in his expression. "You need to contact your coordinator. I have been contacting her all morning." "You cannot enter without authorization." Claire looked through the glass doors. A digital clock above the reception desk read 8:56, 4 minutes. "I was told the client requested me." The guard looked at her more carefully. "Who told you that, my agency?" He lifted a radio. "Lobby to command. I have an unlisted contract interpreter requesting access to level 44. Static answered. Claire heard a male voice through the radio. "Name, Claire Bennett." A pause followed. "Hold her there." The guard lowered the radio. Claire stared at him. "Hold me. Wait here. I am supposed to be in the room in 3 minutes." The man did not respond. Claire moved toward the reception desk. Another security officer stepped into her path. "Ma'am, I am not attempting to enter without clearance. I need someone to tell the meeting organizer that the interpreter is downstairs. They know." The answer was worse than she expected. She stood beneath the lobby lights while water gathered beneath her shoes. Employees passed through the turnstiles. A courier glanced at her wet clothes. 2 attorneys entered together talking about revised schedules. One of them carried a red folder marked with the same confidential matter number as Claire's blue portfolio. Claire noticed it. Red. Her materials were blue. She looked down at the label on her folder. The matter number matched. The color did not. Her phone showed 9 o'clock. The meeting had begun. The radio sounded again. Temporary access approved. Photograph and escort. The security officer led her to the desk. The receptionist took Claire's picture while she stood soaked and breathless. The printer produced a white temporary badge. Claire clipped it to her dress. The guard placed her portfolio through a scanner. "Open the folder. These are confidential client materials. This entire floor is confidential." Claire opened it. He inspected the pages, then returned them. Elevator 6. Claire moved toward the elevator bank. The guard followed. "I can find the floor. You are being escorted." The elevator doors opened. Inside mirrored walls reflected her from 4 directions. Wet hair, pale face, mud along the hem of her dress, hands that would not stop trembling. The guard pressed 44. Claire removed a compact mirror from her bag. She tried to repair her lipstick. The tube shook against her fingers. She stopped. The elevator passed the 20th floor, then the 30th. Claire closed her eyes. She could hear her pulse. When the doors opened, the guard gestured toward a long corridor lined with dark wood and glass. At the far end stood 2 more security officers. Beyond them, closed conference room doors. One officer checked her badge. "Wait." Claire looked at the clock mounted on the wall. 9:12. "I have already waited." The man touched his earpiece. Inside the conference room, a voice rose faintly through the doors. A man was speaking in English. The tone was polished, controlled, and confident. Claire could not hear every word. She heard revised provision, no additional exposure, commercially equivalent. She looked down at her notes. Commercially equivalent. The phrase did not belong in the material she had reviewed. One of the security officers opened the door. "Go in." Claire stepped forward, then stopped. Every instinct in her wanted one more second, one breath, one chance to become the woman Charles Whitmore had said she was not. But there was no time to build command presence in a hallway. There was only the room. Claire pressed the portfolio against her chest and entered. 18 people turned toward her. At the far end of the table sat Vincent Caruso. She knew him immediately, not because she had seen many photographs. There were surprisingly few. She knew him because every other person in the room seemed arranged around his silence. He wore a dark suit with no tie. His hands rested beside a closed leather folder. His face gave nothing away. Grant Mercer stood near a screen at the opposite end of the room. He looked annoyed. Vincent looked at Claire. His gaze moved once over the temporary badge, the wet dress, the blue folder, and her shaking hands. Claire forced herself to speak. "I am Claire Bennett. I am the replacement interpreter. I apologize for the delay." Vincent lifted one hand. Grant stopped speaking. The room became silent. Vincent closed the contract in front of him. "Meeting's over." Claire's stomach dropped. Grant gave a short laugh. "We have spent 11 months preparing this negotiation." Vincent did not look away from Claire. "I did not say the negotiation was over." His voice was quiet enough that everyone listened harder. "I said this meeting is—" Grant's eyes narrowed. Because an interpreter arrived late, Vincent turned his head. "Because someone placed a woman I have never cleared inside a confidential negotiation and expected me not to notice." Claire felt the floor shift beneath her. She had entered believing she was about to be fired. Now the most dangerous man in New Orleans was looking at her as if she might be evidence. Vincent told security to clear the floor. Chairs moved at once. Attorneys closed laptops. Executives gathered folders. The Altamira representatives exchanged confused looks as they were guided toward the doors. Grant remained still. "We cannot suspend a binding session every time your security department becomes uncomfortable." Vincent's expression did not change. "You are still standing in my building, Grant." That was all. Grant collected his papers. As he passed Claire, he slowed. Their eyes met. His expression changed for less than a second. Not surprise, not irritation, recognition. Claire had never met him. Yet Grant Mercer looked at her as though he had been waiting to see whether she would arrive. He gave her a small smile and left. The doors closed. Claire remained with Vincent, a silver-haired attorney, and a broad-shouldered man wearing a security earpiece. Vincent rose. He walked toward her without hurry. Claire held the portfolio tighter. "You believe I was sent here to spy on you. I do not know why you were sent here. My agency assigned me. Another interpreter was confirmed yesterday. I received the assignment after midnight." The security chief placed a tablet on the table, 8 hours and 46 minutes after the original confirmation was removed. Claire looked at the screen. Her name appeared beside the assignment number. Below it was a line she had never seen. "Replacement requested by client representative." The identity field was blank. Claire looked at Vincent. "I did not know." His eyes remained on her face. "Who requested you?" "No one I know." "Why was your name selected?" "My coordinator said I was the highest cleared interpreter available." "Is that true?" "Yes." Vincent stopped several feet away. "You are shaking." Claire hated that he had noticed. "I ran 6 blocks through a storm. That is not the only reason." She met his gaze. "No." The attorney watched her closely. Vincent gestured toward the table. "Sit down." Claire did not move. "Am I being questioned?" "Yes." "Then I prefer to stand." Something shifted in his expression, not anger, not quite amusement. He studied her as if the answer had changed the shape of the room. "Tell me exactly how you came to be here." Claire began with the midnight call. She described the incomplete documents, Rebecca's evasive answers, the canceled transportation, the missing access authorization, and the temporary badge. The attorney asked to see the assignment email. Claire unlocked her phone and handed it to him. Vincent extended his hand. Claire kept her phone where it was. "You may review the email," she said. "You may not search my private messages." The security chief looked at Vincent. A long silence passed. Vincent lowered his hand. "The email only." The attorney scrolled through the assignment record. "She received the materials at 12:16, he said. "No contact with either company before that." Vincent looked toward the security chief. "Marcus." Marcus touched his earpiece as someone spoke to him. His face hardened. The original interpreter did not cancel voluntarily. Claire turned. "What does that mean?" Marcus looked at Vincent. "Someone called her husband from a blocked number at 6:20 this morning. Told him she had been in a car accident and was being taken to University Medical Center." Claire felt cold despite the dry air of the room. Was she? No. Then where is she at home? Her husband could not reach her for 20 minutes because she was in the shower. By the time they confirmed the call was false, Her assignment had already been removed from the agency system. Vincent's face became still, the kind of stillness that made Claire understand why people feared him. "Find the number. Already working on it." Vincent turned back to Claire. She held his gaze, though every part of her wanted to look away. The question was no longer whether she had arrived late. The question was why someone had created an emergency, removed another interpreter, and placed Claire in that room. The attorney closed her email. "The cleanest legal solution is to release Ms. Bennett and locate a new interpreter." Vincent looked at Claire. "You will receive the full 3-day fee." She stared at him. "You are paying me to leave. I am paying you because this situation was not created by you." "And everyone outside that door, what about them? What will they believe when I disappear?" Vincent did not answer. Claire stepped toward the empty interpreter's chair. "They will believe you found a security risk. I did find a security risk. You found a compromised process. That is not the same thing." Marcus watched her. The attorney began to speak, but Claire continued. "I spent 8 years becoming qualified to sit in that chair. Someone interfered with this assignment before I knew it existed. If I leave now, that person decides what my presence means." Vincent's eyes narrowed slightly. "You may be in danger. I understand. You do not understand enough. Then explain it." The room went quiet. Claire heard the challenge after she had already spoken it. Vincent moved closer. "Caruso Maritime controls commercial access to 3 private terminals along the Gulf. Altamira wants exclusive priority through those terminals. The language in this agreement affects hundreds of millions of dollars in freight over the next decade." Claire listened. "Several groups do not want the agreement signed," he continued. "Some would prefer the negotiation to fail. Others would prefer me to sign a version that does not protect my company. And you believe an interpreter could be used to change that version? A single word could change it." Claire thought of the draft on her tablet. "Commercially reasonable, commercially viable. Yes," she said. "It could." Vincent studied her response. "You still want to stay?" Claire looked at the chair again. She thought of the rain, the broken streetcar, the dirty water on her dress, the temporary badge, and the old evaluation in the bottom drawer of her desk. "I prepared for this work. That was not my question." She took a breath. "Yes, I want to stay. You are afraid." Claire could have denied it. Every instinct built by years of professional judgment told her to deny weakness in front of a man like Vincent Caruso. Instead, she said, "Yes." His gaze remained fixed on her. Claire continued, "Fear does not make me incompetent. Something changed between them. It was small. No one else in the room might have noticed." Vincent looked at her differently. Not as a possible intruder, not as a frightened woman. As someone who understood exactly what she was risking and had chosen to remain anyway. "No," he said. "It does not." The meeting resumed 20 minutes later. Security checked every device brought back into the room. Marcus placed an officer outside each door. Daniel Price, the silver-haired attorney, sat closer to Claire than before. Grant returned with the Altamira delegation. He looked at Claire, seated behind the interpreter's microphone. His expression revealed nothing. Vincent took his place at the head of the table. "Continue." Grant opened his folder. "As I was explaining, the revised exclusivity provision creates no additional exposure for either party." Claire listened. Then she interpreted into Spanish. Her voice was steady. The first sentence came cleanly, then the second, then the third. She preserved Grant's certainty without improving his argument. She carried Vincent's restrained hostility into Spanish without turning it into aggression. When Sofia Alvarez, Altamira's senior executive, asked a careful question, Claire preserved the caution inside it. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The room stopped watching the wet hem of her dress. Claire disappeared into the work. This was where she was strongest. Not in hallways, not beneath security cameras, inside meaning. Grant advanced to the exclusivity clause. Altamira will maintain Caruso Maritime's preferred port access whenever such access remains commercially reasonable under prevailing market conditions. Claire glanced at the Spanish version. Her hand stopped above the page. The English clause required reasonable commercial conduct. The Spanish clause required access only when market conditions made the arrangement commercially advantageous. One standard demanded fairness, the other permitted withdrawal whenever profit declined. Claire read both lines again. Grant continued speaking. She raised one hand. As interpreter, I need to note a discrepancy between the English and Spanish versions. The room turned toward her. Grant's eyes hardened. They expressed the same commercial intention. Claire looked at him. No, they do not. Daniel leaned forward. Explain. Claire placed both clauses on the screen. The English version requires the parties to act in a commercially reasonable manner. The Spanish version makes continued access dependent on commercial viability under market conditions. Sophia read the Spanish text. Vincent looked toward Grant. What is the difference in effect? Claire answered carefully. Under the English version, Altamira must behave according to an objective standard of reasonableness. Under the Spanish version, Altamira could restrict access whenever it determines that continued access is no longer financially advantageous. Grant folded his hands. That is an unnecessarily rigid interpretation. It is the language on the page. The provisions are functionally equivalent. They are not legally equivalent. Silence filled the room. Grant looked at Claire for a long moment. She could see the exact instant he stopped viewing her as an inconvenience. His attention became sharper, colder. Vincent leaned back in his chair. You told me the drafts matched. Grant turned toward him. They were prepared to reflect the same intent. That was not my statement. No, Claire said quietly. It was not. Grant's eyes returned to her. The negotiation paused while both legal teams marked the clause for revision. Claire reached for her water. Her hand was steady now. Across the table, Grant Mercer smiled without warmth. During the break, he walked into the corridor, opened a secure message on his phone, and typed a single instruction. Pull Bennett's full history. Clients, complaints, financial problems, everything. He sent the message and deleted it. Through the conference room glass, Claire was speaking with Daniel. For a brief moment, she laughed. Vincent Caruso looked toward the sound. Grant watched Vincent watching her. Then Grant slipped the phone into his pocket and returned to the room. Grant returned to the conference room with the calm expression of a man who had not just ordered someone to dismantle Claire Bennett's life. The negotiation continued for another hour. Claire remained focused on the words moving across the table, but she could feel Grant studying her whenever he believed no one was watching. His attention no longer carried irritation. It carried calculation. Vincent noticed it too. He said nothing. That silence did not comfort her. It made the space between the two men feel like the pause before a gunshot. When Sofia Alvarez requested a brief recess, chairs moved back from the table and conversations separated into quiet groups. Daniel left with two attorneys to review the exclusivity clause. Marcus stepped into the corridor and spoke into his earpiece. Claire carried her empty coffee cup toward the refreshment station. Grant followed. She heard his footsteps before his reflection appeared beside hers in the dark glass wall. You handled yourself well, he said. Claire poured coffee. I did my job. In rooms like this, those are not always the same thing. She reached for the sugar. Is that supposed to be advice professional concern? For me, for anyone who becomes interesting to Vincent Caruso? Claire stirred the coffee slowly. Grant stood close enough that the conversation appeared casual, but not close enough to draw attention. Men like Caruso do not notice people without eventually claiming something from them, he said. Claire lifted the cup. You seem very familiar with his habits. I have spent almost a year negotiating with him. That was not my question. Grant's smile tightened. You are intelligent, Ms. Bennett. Intelligent people should understand that attention from powerful men often arrives with an invoice. Claire met his eyes. So does unsolicited advice. She stepped around him. Grant spoke before she could return to the table. Ask yourself why he let you stay. Claire stopped. The room behind them was filled with low conversation and the quiet rustle of papers. Grant continued. His attorney advised removing you. His security chief considered you a threat. Yet Vincent kept you in the room. I am qualified to be here. I did not say you were not. Then what are you saying? I am saying qualification may not be the only reason. Claire felt heat rise beneath her skin. She refused to let him see it. You should return to your client. Grant glanced toward Vincent. He is not the one I am worried about. Then he walked away. Claire remained beside the coffee station for several seconds. She knew what he was doing. He was placing a thought inside her mind and allowing her to injure herself with it. She looked toward Vincent. He stood near the windows with Marcus the Mississippi River moving dark and swollen behind them. Vincent was listening to a security report. His expression was unreadable. As though sensing her attention, he turned. Their eyes met across the room. Claire looked away first. The meeting resumed. The next section concerned suspension rights, customs violations, and the conditions under which either company could restrict access to shared terminals. Grant spoke with renewed confidence. He explained that Altamira required the ability to suspend service immediately if Caruso Maritime became involved in conduct that threatened regulatory compliance. Claire interpreted the statement into Spanish for the members of Vincent's team who preferred to follow both versions. Then Sophia responded. Claire translated her answer into English. The rhythm of the room settled again. Statement, interpretation, response, interpretation. Each voice passed through Claire without becoming hers. Grant directed everyone to Section 14. Claire read the English clause while he spoke. Written notice would be required before suspension. A reasonable opportunity to respond would follow. The affected party could submit documentation. She moved to the Spanish draft. Her pulse changed. The Spanish version permitted immediate suspension following a credible allegation of misconduct. No written notice, no response period, no requirement that the allegation be proven. Claire raised her hand. Grant stopped. His expression hardened before she spoke. There is another material difference between the two versions. Daniel opened his copy. Where Section 14, Paragraph 3. Claire placed the documents side by side. The English version requires written notice and an opportunity to respond before access can be suspended. The Spanish version allows immediate suspension based on a credible allegation. Sophia frowned. That was not our instruction. Grant turned toward her. The language was designed to protect your company from regulatory exposure. It gives our company authority we did not discuss. Grant's voice remained smooth. It provides necessary flexibility. Vincent looked at Claire. What is the practical effect? Claire answered without looking at Grant. One version requires a process. The other permits punishment before evidence is established. The room became quiet. Vincent tapped one finger against the closed folder in front of him. Remove it. Grant leaned forward. We should not rewrite every provision because Ms. Bennett prefers a different phrasing. Claire looked at him. This is not a preference. You are interpreting the clause as though the parties are adversaries. They are negotiating a contract. That does not make them adversaries. No, Claire said. The language does. Sophia lowered her eyes to hide the beginning of a smile. Grant saw it. His jaw tightened. The clause was marked for revision. By late afternoon, the storm had become worse. A flash flood warning appeared on every phone in the room. Several streets surrounding Rivermark Tower were closed. The Altamira delegation decided to remain inside until conditions improved. Claire packed her notes after the session ended. When she entered the corridor, 2 security officers were waiting near the elevator. One stepped forward. We will escort you to your hotel. Claire looked at him. I did not request an escort. Mr. Caruso authorized it. Vincent's voice came from behind her. It was not a request. Claire turned. He stood several feet away with his coat over one arm. The hallway had emptied. Daniel was speaking to Sophia near the conference room doors. Marcus watched from a discreet distance. Claire held Vincent's gaze. I am not under arrest. No. Then I do not need armed men taking me anywhere. You may have been deliberately inserted into a compromised negotiation. That makes me a witness. It does not make me your property. Marcus looked toward the windows. One of the security officers became suddenly interested in the elevator display. Vincent's expression remained controlled. You believe this is about ownership. I believe men with armed employees should be careful what they call protection. For a moment, the entire corridor seemed to hold its breath. Claire could hear rain striking the glass. Vincent looked at the 2 officers. One of you can leave. The younger man stepped away immediately. Marcus remained near the elevator. Marcus will take you to the lobby, Vincent said. After that, you can choose how you leave. Claire considered the compromise. Fine. Vincent pressed the elevator button. The doors opened. Claire entered with Marcus. Vincent remained outside. Before the doors closed, Claire looked at him. You could have asked. His eyes stayed on hers. Yes. The doors met between them. Inside the elevator, Marcus stood with his hands clasped in front of him. Claire watched the floor numbers descend. Does he always respond that well to being told no? Marcus looked straight ahead. No. That was not reassuring. It was not meant to be. The elevator passed the 30th floor. Claire adjusted the strap of her bag. Are the stories about him true? Marcus remained silent. Claire waited. His refusal answered more than words would have. Why do you work for him? She asked. Marcus glanced at her reflection. Because there are dangerous men who enjoy being dangerous, and Vincent he considers it a responsibility. Claire looked at him. That does not make it better, no, Marcus said. It makes it more complicated. The lobby doors opened. Rain covered the glass entrance in silver sheets. A black sedan waited outside. Claire took out her phone and requested a car. Marcus looked at the screen. Drivers are canceling throughout the city. I will wait. I can take you to the hotel. No, Mr. Caruso will ask. Tell him I chose. Marcus studied her for a moment. Then he nodded. Claire sat near the lobby windows until a driver accepted the trip. When she arrived at the hotel, the storm had trapped much of downtown indoors. The restaurant was closed, room service was delayed, and the lobby was crowded with stranded travelers. Claire went upstairs, changed out of her wet dress, and placed the damaged shoes beside the door. She should have been exhausted. Instead, she opened the contract again. The two disputed clauses remained in her mind. Commercially reasonable, commercially viable, written notice, credible allegation. The differences were too consistent to feel accidental. Each English provision imposed an objective standard. Each Spanish provision created discretion for Altamira. Claire wrote the comparison in her notebook. At 7:12, her phone rang. Rebecca. Claire answered. Did the client complain about the delay? Rebecca did not respond immediately. Claire sat straighter. What happened? We received a professional conduct inquiry. About me. It is being classified as a neutrality concern. Claire stared at the window. Lightning flashed over the city. Who submitted it? The report came through a legal representative connected to the negotiation. Grant Mercer. I cannot confirm that. What does it say? Rebecca took a breath. It states that you may have developed an inappropriate relationship with a principal party and that your interpretations may favor Caruso Maritime. Claire rose from the desk. That is false. I understand. No, you do not. I found two differences between the contracts. Both favored Altamira. I disclosed them to everyone. The report does not accuse you of a specific mistranslation. Then what exactly am I supposed to defend? It raises questions about perceived impartiality. Perceived by whom we have to review it. Claire closed her eyes. What happens during the review? Your current assignment remains active unless the client removes you. And my other assignments, Rebecca hesitated. Executive placements will be temporarily suspended. The word struck harder than Claire expected. For how long until compliance completes its review? That could take weeks. I know. I have assignments next month. They will be reassigned if necessary. Claire gripped the edge of the desk. A complaint with no example, no mistranslation, and no evidence had already reached into her future. Send me everything in writing, she said. I cannot send the confidential submission. Then send me the allegation, the procedure, and the standard you intend to use. Claire, you are freezing my work based on a concern no one is willing to state clearly. Put the process in writing. Rebecca became quiet. I will send what I can. The call ended. Claire lowered the phone. For several seconds she did not move. Then she opened her email. A formal notice arrived less than a minute later. The language was polished and bloodless. Potential conflict, appearance of partiality, pending review, temporary restriction. Nothing in the notice accused Claire of doing anything wrong. Nothing needed to. The words were designed to damage her without creating anything solid enough to fight. A knock sounded at the hotel room door. Claire froze. She walked toward it quietly and looked through the security lens. Marcus stood outside. Vincent stood beside him. Claire opened the door but did not remove the chain. What are you doing here? Vincent held up his phone. Marcus received notice of the complaint. How my legal team monitors anything connected to this negotiation. That is not comforting. I did not intend it to be. Claire looked down the hallway. You cannot come into my room. Vincent's face revealed nothing. I did not ask to. Claire opened the door wider, but left the chain in place. We can speak downstairs. They met in the hotel lobby 10 minutes later. Claire had changed into black trousers and a cream sweater. Her hair was still damp from the shower. Vincent sat in a chair near the window, separated from the other guests by nothing more than the space people instinctively gave him. Marcus remained near the entrance. Claire handed Vincent her phone. He read the notice once, then again. His expression became colder with each line. I will handle Mercer. The certainty in his voice made Claire's stomach tighten. How Vincent looked up. It is better if you do not know. Claire took the phone from his hand. No. His eyes narrowed. No, you do not get to protect me with something I will have to spend the rest of my life pretending not to understand. He is trying to destroy your career, and you are speaking as though you can make him disappear from the problem. I did not say that. You did not have to. Vincent leaned back slowly. People moved through the lobby around them, unaware that the conversation beside the window carried the weight of violence. Claire lowered her voice. If you threaten him, hurt him, buy someone, blackmail someone, or use my name to justify anything you would not explain to me, then he wins. That makes no sense. He wants to prove I belong to you. Vincent's jaw tightened. Claire continued. The moment you fight this battle without my permission, you prove him right. For the first time since she entered his conference room, Vincent looked genuinely unsettled, not angry, uncertain. Claire stood. This is my name, my work, my future. He started the fight. It is still mine. Vincent rose as well. He was taller than she remembered from across the table. The lobby lights caught the hard line of his face. I am not asking you to abandon me, Claire said. What are you asking? Do not turn my career into a battlefield between two powerful men. Rain pressed against the windows behind him. Vincent looked toward the street. Claire did not know whether he was controlling his anger or deciding how much of her refusal he was willing to tolerate. When he turned back, his voice was quieter. Give me until morning. For what? To find a way you can know about. Claire searched his face. No threats, no threats. No one gets hurt. His silence lasted 1 second too long. Vincent, no one gets hurt, no private information used against his family. Agreed. No action in my name without telling me. He held her gaze. Agreed. Claire nodded. Vincent walked toward the lobby doors. Marcus followed. Outside, a black car moved to the curb. Before entering, Vincent called Daniel. Daniel answered immediately. Tell me you did not send Marcus to Mercer's house. Vincent looked back through the hotel glass. Claire remained beside the window watching him. I called you instead. Daniel became silent. Vincent opened the car door. Find the liability memorandum Grant buried, he said, and find out who ordered Bennett into that room. Daniel asked the question carefully. Legally, Vincent watched Claire turn away from the window and walk toward the elevators. She made that a condition. Vincent kept his promise. By 7 the next morning, no one had been threatened, followed home, or pulled into a dark room by men who knew how to make fear sound reasonable. Instead, Daniel Price sat at the long dining table inside Vincent's private residence, surrounded by contracts, printed emails, regulatory reports, and 3 untouched cups of coffee. Rain still pressed against the windows, though the violence of the storm had weakened. New Orleans looked washed clean from a distance. Streets shone beneath gray morning light. Water moved slowly along the gutters. Somewhere below, a delivery truck struggled through an intersection and sounded its horn. Vincent stood near the window with his sleeves rolled to his forearms. He had not slept. Daniel could tell by the stillness in him. Vincent became quieter when he was tired. Most people became careless. Vincent became precise. Marcus entered carrying a black folder. We found the consultant. Vincent turned. Name, Ethan Cole, 34. Contract investigator. He has done temporary work for Mercer's firm 6 times in the past year. Daniel closed the document in front of him. Did he make the call to the original interpreter's husband? The phone was purchased with cash 2 days ago. It was activated near Mercer's office. Location records placed Cole within 2 blocks when the call was made. Can he be tied directly to Grant? Vincent asked. Not yet. Marcus placed the folder on the table. He claims someone asked him to verify whether the interpreter was still available. He says the false accident story was not his idea. Whose idea was it, he refuses to say. Vincent's face remained expressionless. Daniel watched him carefully. Yesterday, that refusal would have placed Ethan Cole inside a room without windows. This morning, Vincent simply asked, "What can we prove Marcus understood the importance of the question?" "We can prove Cole contacted the interpreter's husband. We can prove someone using credentials associated with Mercer's office accessed the agency portal 11 minutes later. We can prove Claire Bennett was requested as the replacement." Daniel leaned forward. "Requested by name?" "Yes." Vincent looked toward him. Could Grant have known she was qualified? Her agency profile lists maritime experience, legal clearance, and prior federal assignments. It does not list private client details. Then why Claire Marcus opened the folder? She worked a mediation 4 years ago involving a shipping subcontractor later acquired by Altamira. Grant's office received copies of the interpreter certifications. Daniel understood first. He knew her name. Marcus nodded. He also knew she had the clearance needed to enter this negotiation. Vincent returned his attention to the window. So he removes the original interpreter and requests Claire. Daniel considered the sequence. That does not explain why he would choose someone capable of finding the altered language. "Maybe he did not expect her to find it," Marcus said. "Or maybe her presence served another purpose," Daniel replied. Vincent looked at him. "Explain." "If Grant wanted the negotiation compromised, an interpreter inserted through a manipulated process gives him several options. If she made mistakes, he could blame her. If you removed her, he could claim you disrupted the session. If you kept her and showed any interest, he could accuse her of bias." Marcus folded his arms. He created a problem that could be used regardless of how Vincent responded. Daniel nodded, and Claire became useful the moment she entered the building. Vincent's gaze hardened. She was useful to him before she knew the assignment existed. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Daniel opened another file. "There is more." He slid a memorandum across the table. The document carried Altamira's internal legal seal. Its subject concerned undeclared customs violations at a private terminal near Brownsville, Texas. Vincent read the first page. The terminal had processed restricted cargo under incorrect classification codes. Several shipments had moved through without the required inspections. Internal counsel had warned that the violations could lead to regulatory penalties, suspended operating privileges, and civil liability. At the bottom of the receipt page were Grant Mercer's initials. Vincent looked up. "He received this 6 months ago." "Yes." "And never disclosed it. Not during due diligence. Not during negotiations. Not when Altamira demanded immediate suspension rights against Caruso Maritime for alleged regulatory misconduct." Marcus let out a quiet breath. Vincent read the memorandum again. Grant had tried to secure the power to suspend Caruso Maritime based on an accusation while hiding documented violations within his own client's operation. The hypocrisy was useful. The concealment was better. "What can we do with it?" Vincent asked. Daniel answered carefully. "We can raise it during the negotiation. We can request formal disclosure. We can require a regulatory warranty inside the final agreement. If Altamira refuses, we can suspend talks and notify the appropriate authorities. And Grant, if his client did not know he withheld it, he may lose them. If they did know, the company faces a larger problem." Vincent placed the memorandum on the table. "No threats." Daniel almost smiled. "I remember the condition, no private pressure. I remember that too. No one contacts his family." Daniel's expression changed. "That was never part of my strategy. It would have been part of mine." The admission settled between them. Vincent looked toward Marcus. "Did anyone approach Mercer last night?" "No." "Keep it that way." Marcus nodded. Vincent picked up his phone. "Call Claire." Daniel checked the time. "It is 7:20. She will be awake." Vincent knew this with a certainty he could not explain. Claire answered on the 4th ring. Her voice was alert but tired. "Is anyone hurt?" Vincent looked at Daniel. "No." "Did anyone receive a threat?" "No." "Did Marcus visit Grant's house?" Marcus raised one eyebrow. Vincent said no. Claire exhaled. "Then tell me what you found." Vincent looked at the documents spread across the table. Not over the phone. Silence followed. Claire finally said, "I will meet you at the tower," At 8, I will be there at 7:45. The call ended. Daniel watched Vincent lower the phone. She is not afraid of you in the usual way. Vincent looked at him. What is the usual way most people fear what you might do to them? And Claire, she fears what you might do for her. Vincent did not respond. At 7:43, Claire walked through the lobby of Rivermark Tower. She wore a charcoal suit, a white blouse, and black shoes with low heels. Her hair was pulled into a smooth knot. The temporary badge from the previous day had been replaced with a printed credential bearing her name and photograph. She looked composed. Only the tension in her jaw revealed that she had slept less than Vincent. Marcus met her at the elevator. "You are early. I was late once. I am correcting the record." He pressed the button. Claire noticed the black folder beneath his arm. "Did you find the person who made the call?" "Yes. Was it Grant? We can connect the person to his office. We cannot yet prove Grant ordered it." Claire nodded. She appreciated that Marcus did not claim more than the evidence supported. The elevator doors opened on the 44th floor. Vincent waited inside the smaller conference room with Daniel. Breakfast had been placed on a side table. Coffee, fruit toast, and eggs remained untouched. Claire entered. Her eyes moved first to Vincent, then to the documents. "You kept your word." Vincent leaned against the edge of the table. "You expected me not to. I expected you to interpret it creatively." Daniel covered a smile by lifting his coffee cup. Vincent did not appear offended. "I considered several creative interpretations." Claire placed her portfolio on the table. "And I rejected them." "Why you asked me to." The simplicity of the answer unsettled her. Claire sat. Daniel explained the evidence involving Ethan Cole, the false emergency call, and the agency portal. He showed Claire the request submitted under credentials associated with Grant's office. Her name appeared in the assignment field. Claire read it twice. "I was selected before the original interpreter's cancellation was processed." "Yes," Daniel said. "So this was planned. That is the most reasonable conclusion. Why me?" Marcus explained the earlier mediation involving the Altamira subcontractor. Claire remembered it. The case involved disputed warehouse fees and damaged cargo. Grant had not attended personally, but one of his associates had participated through video conference. "I corrected their translation of an insurance exclusion," Claire said. Daniel looked at her. "What happened?" "The Spanish document made the exclusion broader than the English policy. The company had to revise it." Vincent's expression became colder. "He knew you had done this before. His office knew." Claire looked again at the assignment request. Grant had not chosen a careless interpreter. He had chosen someone with a documented history of identifying bilingual discrepancies. The realization made her uneasy. Maybe finding the differences was part of the plan. Daniel nodded slowly. "If you found them, Grant could claim you were working for Vincent. If you did not find them, the altered language remained. Either way, I became the problem." "No," Vincent said. "You became the explanation he intended to use." Claire looked at him. The distinction mattered. It also frightened her. Daniel placed the customs memorandum in front of Claire. She read the summary, then the receipt page with Grant's initials. Her eyes narrowed. He tried to give Altamira immediate suspension rights for allegations while hiding actual customs violations. "Yes." Claire turned several pages. "Does Sofia Alvarez know we do not know?" Daniel said. "Can this document be raised legally?" "Yes." "Can the source be explained?" "It came through ordinary due diligence. It was embedded in supplemental disclosures." Claire looked at Vincent. "You did not steal it." "No." "You did not force anyone to provide it." "No." "You did not threaten Ethan Cole." Vincent held her gaze. "No." She searched his face. "Did anyone else threaten him without using your name?" "No." Daniel leaned back. "I drafted a strategy that should satisfy the court of Claire Bennett." Claire looked at him. "That court has narrow jurisdiction. It has been unusually effective." Vincent pushed away from the table. "The question is whether you remain in the room." Daniel's tone became more serious. "The safest option is still to replace you. The evidence confirms the assignment was compromised. Another interpreter could take over under monitored conditions." Claire closed the memorandum. "If I leave, Grant's complaint becomes the last statement about me." "The complaint can still be challenged. By lawyers." "Yes." "While I disappear." Daniel did not answer. Claire looked at Vincent. You said yesterday that a single word could change the agreement. It can. My absence changes the meaning of what happened. Vincent crossed his arms. You believe leaving would look like an admission. I know it would. You may face a public accusation. I already faced a private one. This will be different. Yes, you are still willing to return. Claire rested one hand on her portfolio. I did not spend 8 years learning how to speak accurately for other people so that I could become silent when my own name was questioned. Vincent watched her. There was no dramatic declaration in her voice, no performance of courage. Only decision. Daniel opened a legal pad. Then we need a process no one can challenge. For the next 40 minutes, they rebuilt the rules of the negotiation. Every interpretation channel would be recorded. Every disputed phrase would appear on the central screen in both languages. An independent linguist would remain available through secure video connection. Claire would interpret spoken language, but would not advise either company. Any textual discrepancy would be documented and reviewed by both legal teams. Every revision would carry initials from authorized representatives of Caruso Maritime and Altamira. Claire listened to each condition. Add one more. Daniel lifted his pen. If anyone challenges an interpretation, they must identify the exact statement and propose correction. Vincent understood immediately. No general accusations. No undefined concerns, Claire said. If my work is questioned, the question needs language context and evidence. Daniel wrote it down. Agreed. Vincent looked at Claire. Anything else? She considered him for a moment. You do not speak for me unless I ask. The room became still. Daniel lowered his pen. Marcus looked toward Vincent. Vincent said agreed. Claire held his gaze. Even if Grant attacks me, yes. Even if you believe you can end it faster. A muscle moved once in Vincent's jaw. Yes. Claire nodded. Then I am ready. At 9 o'clock, the Altamira delegation returned. The storm had passed, leaving the city beneath a pale sky. Sunlight reflected from the river and entered the conference room in narrow bands. Sofia Alvarez arrived first. Grant followed with 2 associates. His attention moved immediately to Claire. She sat at the interpreter's station wearing a headset, her notes arranged in a precise stack. This time she was dry. This time her badge carried permanent access for the duration of the negotiation. This time there was no apology waiting on her lips. Grant placed his folder on the table. You decided to continue. Claire adjusted the microphone. I was contracted for 3 days. Your assignment is under review. I have not been removed. Grant glanced toward Vincent. Vincent did not look at Claire. He opened the contract. The revised procedure is in front of you. Grant read the first page. His expression changed as he reached the requirement for specific evidence when challenging an interpretation. This is excessive. Daniel folded his hands. It protects both parties. It gives an interpreter unusual authority over the negotiation. Claire spoke before Daniel could answer. It gives the record authority. Grant looked at her. Your distinction is convenient. It is documented. Sofia read the procedure in Spanish, then nodded. Altamira accepts. Grant looked toward her. We should discuss the operational burden. We have already lost time because the language was inconsistent, Sofia said. A clearer process is not a burden. Vincent signed the procedure. Sofia signed after him. Grant added his initials last. The negotiation resumed. For nearly an hour the process worked. Claire interpreted without interruption. The independent linguist confirmed 2 technical phrases. Daniel and Grant resolved a customs notice issue. Sofia requested a change to the insurance requirement. No one raised voices. No one questioned Claire's presence. The calm felt fragile. Grant moved to the suspension provisions. Section 14 reflects yesterday's revisions, he said. Both versions now require notice before access rights may be restricted. Claire opened the English draft. The clause read, access may be suspended following a documented material breach that remains uncured after written notice. She opened the Spanish version. Access may be suspended following a material breach that remains uncured after written notice. Claire read it again. The word was missing. Documented. Without it, the Spanish version required notice, but did not require proof. An allegation could be described as a breach before it had been established. Claire raised her hand. Grant stopped speaking. The tension returned so quickly that it seemed the room had been waiting for it. I need to identify another discrepancy. Grant closed his eyes for a moment. We reviewed this clause yesterday. We reviewed the notice requirement. This is a separate issue. Daniel opened both drafts. Claire placed the lines on the central screen. The English word documented appeared in yellow. The corresponding place in the Spanish sentence was empty. Sophia leaned forward. Vincent looked at Claire. What does the missing word change? Claire spoke in English first, then repeated the explanation in Spanish. It changes the standard required before suspension. The English version requires a material breach supported by documentation. The Spanish version allows suspension after a material breach is alleged even if the underlying facts have not been established. Grant shook his head. That interpretation assumes bad faith. It recognizes the language that exists. The written notice requirement prevents abuse. No, Claire said. It informs the accused party after the breach has already been treated as fact. Grant's voice sharpened. You continue to describe commercial protections as though my client intends to misuse them. Claire remained calm. I am describing what the provision permits. Vincent's gaze stayed on the screen. One word. Claire looked at him. Yes. One missing word allows punishment without evidence. Yes. The silence that followed felt different from every silence before it. The room understood the contract. Claire understood the complaint against her. Grant understood that both now reflected each other. Sophia turned toward him. Why was documented removed from the Spanish draft? Grant opened his notes. It was likely omitted during revision. By whom I would need to check the document history. Daniel slid a printed report across the table. We checked it. Grant looked at him. Daniel continued. The word was removed yesterday evening by a user assigned to your document team. Grant did not touch the report. One clerical deletion does not indicate intent. No, Claire said. But it still changes the agreement. Grant looked at her. Something in his expression lost its polish. Before we accept further interpretive recommendations, Altamira requires clarity regarding Ms. Bennett's neutrality. Daniel began to object. Claire lifted one hand, not toward Grant, toward Vincent. Vincent had already leaned forward. His eyes were fixed on Grant with a stillness that made Marcus shift near the door. Claire's hand remained raised. Vincent looked at her. For 1 second, the room saw the conflict in him. Every instinct he possessed told him to end the threat. Every promise he had made required him to remain silent. Slowly, Vincent leaned back. Claire lowered her hand. Grant watched the exchange. He mistook restraint for advantage. Ms. Bennett has engaged in repeated private contact with Mr. Caruso, he said. She accepted protection from his security personnel, met with him outside scheduled negotiations, and appears to be participating in discussions beyond the proper role of an interpreter. Claire heard her pulse through the headset. She removed it carefully and placed it on the table. I accepted an escort from this floor to the lobby after learning that the assignment process had been manipulated. Grant spread one hand. By Mr. Caruso's security team. Yes, you met Mr. Caruso at your hotel, in the public lobby, after business hours, after my agency received a complaint questioning my integrity. Sophia turned toward Grant. What complaint? Grant's expression changed. Only slightly. It was enough. Claire opened her portfolio. A request for my employment history was submitted to Crescent Global at 2:16 yesterday afternoon. She placed the email on the screen. The request was sent 23 minutes after I identified the first discrepancy in the exclusivity clause. Grant looked toward Daniel. Daniel said nothing. Claire displayed the second record. At 7:42 last night, my agency received a concern alleging that I had become personally involved with Mr. Caruso and might no longer be neutral. Grant interrupted. You cannot prove who submitted that concern. Claire faced him. No. The answer surprised everyone. She did not soften it. I will not claim what I cannot document. Her eyes moved briefly toward the missing word on the screen. Then she looked back at Grant. But I can document when questions about my professionalism began. Grant folded his arms. Timing is not evidence of bias. No, it is evidence of timing. You are implying retaliation. I am establishing a sequence. Claire brought up the interpretation record. My work was not questioned when I entered late. It was not questioned during the first hour. It was not questioned after I interpreted statements favorable to Altamira. She touched the first timestamp. The requests for my personal and professional history began after I identified language that expanded Altamira's discretion. She touched the second. The complaint followed after I identified another provision that allowed suspension based on an allegation. The independent linguist appeared on the monitor. Daniel asked whether Claire's interpretations had been reviewed. The linguist confirmed that every recorded statement was accurate. Grant looked toward the Altamira delegation. This process is becoming a personal defense rather than a commercial negotiation, Claire answered before anyone else could. You made my neutrality part of the negotiation. Grant's eyes narrowed. I raised a legitimate concern, then stated clearly, I already have. No. Claire's voice remained quiet. You described contact. You described appearance. You described perception. She placed both hands on the table. Identify one sentence I mistranslated. Grant said nothing. One meaning I altered. Silence. One statement I softened for Mr. Caruso. Grant looked toward Vincent. Vincent remained still. Claire continued. One statement I strengthened against your client. Sophia watched Grant now, not Claire. Grant adjusted the papers in front of him. The absence of a specific error does not eliminate concerns about future impartiality. Claire nodded. Then your concern is not based on my work. It is based on the circumstances. Circumstances your office helped create. The words landed without force. They did not need force. Daniel placed the access records on the central screen. The original interpreter received a false emergency call from a consultant linked to Mercer Legal. 11 minutes later, credentials assigned to that office were used to request Claire Bennett by name. Sophia turned sharply toward Grant. Did you authorize that no? Did anyone on your team authorize it? Not to my knowledge. Daniel placed Ethan Cole's information beside the portal record. Grant looked at it without blinking. Claire watched him. You knew who I was before I entered this building. Grant's expression remained composed. My office maintains records from prior matters. You knew I had previously identified an incorrect bilingual exclusion involving an Altamira contractor. That case is irrelevant. It explains why my name was available. It does not prove I selected you. Claire nodded again. No, it does not. Grant looked almost relieved. Then she continued. But you are asking this room to treat unsupported concern as sufficient evidence against me while demanding absolute proof before any question can be asked of you. Sophia looked at the clause on the screen. Documented material breach. The word remained highlighted. Claire's voice softened. That is exactly what this missing word permits. No one moved. Outside the windows, sunlight crossed the river. Inside the room, Grant's authority began to fracture. He looked toward Vincent. Are you really going to allow an interpreter to turn a commercial negotiation into a personal trial? Vincent's eyes moved to Claire. She did not ask him to defend her. She did not ask him to expose Grant. She only waited. Vincent leaned back in his chair. This is still her answer. Claire faced Grant. Do you want me removed because I am biased? She placed one hand beside the two versions of the contract. Or because I am accurate? Grant looked at the evidence on the screen, at Sophia's expression, and at Vincent's silence. For the first time since Claire had entered the tower, he had no prepared sentence waiting for him. Grant Mercer had no prepared sentence waiting for him. For several seconds, the only sound in the conference room came from the ventilation system and the faint movement of traffic far below Rivermark Tower. Claire kept her hand beside the two versions of the contract. One contained the word documented. The other did not. The difference sat on the screen behind her like a verdict. Grant finally leaned back in his chair. This discussion has moved far beyond the proper role of an interpreter. Claire looked at him. My role is to preserve meaning. You are now challenging legal strategy. No, I am challenging language. Grant turned toward Sophia. Altamira should request a replacement before this process becomes more compromised. Sophia did not answer immediately. Her eyes moved from Grant to the screen, then to Daniel's evidence regarding the false emergency call. Before we discuss replacement, she said in Spanish, I want one question answered. Claire interpreted her words into English. Sophia looked directly at Grant. Did anyone in your office request Ms. Bennett by name? Grant clasped his hands. Not with my authorization. That was not my question. His expression tightened. I have no personal knowledge of such a request. Daniel opened a folder. We have the access record. He placed a printed page in front of Sophia. The account used to submit Claire's name belonged to a document coordinator assigned to Mr. Mercer's legal team. Grant glanced down. That account is used by several people. Then provide the access list, Daniel said. We will review the matter internally. Vincent remained silent at the head of the table. Claire could feel his attention without looking at him. His restraint had become a physical presence in the room. Grant noticed it too. He turned toward Vincent. You are allowing your counsel to imply misconduct without proof, Daniel answered calmly. We are presenting records without context, then provide the context. Grant looked back at Sophia. This negotiation concerns a 10-year commercial partnership. We should not allow an administrative issue to derail it. Claire spoke before Sophia could respond. An administrative issue did not call the original interpreter's husband and tell him his wife had been injured. Grant looked at her. You have no evidence I made that call? No. Claire did not hesitate. I have never said you did. Yet you continue placing the accusation in front of this room. I am placing the sequence in front of the room. Grant's voice sharpened. You are not an investigator. No. I am the person whose name was inserted into that sequence. The answer moved through the room quietly. Sophia lowered her gaze to the documents. One of the Altamira executives whispered something to another in Spanish. Claire heard the phrase reputational exposure. She did not react. Daniel opened the second folder. We have another matter to address before negotiations continue. Grant's eyes moved toward him. Daniel placed the customs memorandum on the central screen. The title appeared first. Internal Regulatory Assessment. Brownsville Terminal Operations. Potential classification violations. Sophia's posture changed. What is that? Daniel answered in English. Claire interpreted. This memorandum concerns undeclared customs violations at a private Altamira terminal. It was included in supplemental due diligence material 6 months ago. Grant's face remained composed, but one hand closed slowly around his pen. Sophia read the first paragraph. Her expression hardened. I have not seen this document. Grant turned toward her. It was a preliminary assessment. It carries our internal legal seal. It was not a final determination. Daniel changed the page. Grant's initials appeared at the bottom of the receipt record. You acknowledged receiving it, Daniel said. Grant did not look at the screen. The memorandum did not establish liability. No, Daniel replied. It established potential exposure that should have been disclosed during negotiation. Vincent spoke for the first time. You demanded the right to suspend my company's access based on an allegation. His voice was quiet. Grant looked toward him. Vincent continued. While withholding documented violations inside your own client's operation. Grant set down the pen. We did not withhold anything. The memorandum was included in due diligence, buried inside 9,000 pages, Daniel said. That does not make it concealed. Sophia looked at Grant. Did you advise our negotiating team about this? He turned toward her. I advised that the issue remained unresolved. That is not what I asked. Grant paused. No. The answer changed the atmosphere more completely than any accusation could have. Sophia closed the folder in front of her. You allowed us to negotiate regulatory protections without telling us our own terminal was already under review. There was no formal government investigation at the time. You knew there could be one. My responsibility was to avoid creating unnecessary alarm. Sophia's voice became colder. Your responsibility was to advise your client. Grant glanced toward Vincent. The movement was brief, but Claire saw it. He was searching for another opponent because the person he had been representing was no longer standing beside him. Daniel leaned forward. Caruso Maritime is prepared to continue under revised terms. Grant said nothing. Daniel placed a one-page proposal on the table. The agreement must include full disclosure of the Brownsville matter. Altamira must provide a regulatory warranty. Any suspension right must require documented evidence, written notice, and an opportunity to respond. Sophia read the proposal. These conditions are acceptable in principle. Grant turned sharply. We need time to assess the language. You had 6 months, Vincent said. Grant's eyes hardened. This is coercion. Vincent leaned back. No, coercion would feel different. The room went silent. Claire looked at him. Vincent did not smile. He simply allowed the truth inside the sentence to remain visible. Then he added, This is negotiation, Daniel resumed. There is also the complaint regarding Ms. Bennett. Grant's expression changed again. He had expected the customs memorandum to replace that subject. Daniel placed a blank page beside the proposal. The concern must be withdrawn in writing. Grant shook his head. That matter belongs to the language agency. The complaint originated from someone connected to this negotiation, Daniel said. You cannot prove it came from me. Claire looked at Grant. Then withdrawing it should not trouble you. He turned toward her. I cannot withdraw a document I did not submit. You can provide a written statement confirming that you have no evidence of misconduct in my work. Grant's eyes narrowed. That would imply I raised the concern. No. It would establish your professional position now. He glanced toward Sophia. She watched him without sympathy. Grant spoke carefully. I am willing to state that no translation error has been identified. Claire shook her head. That is not enough. You do not dictate the wording of my professional communication. You dictated consequences for my career without identifying a single professional error. Grant's voice lowered. You are becoming emotional. Claire felt the insult for what it was, an invitation. He wanted anger. He wanted her voice to rise. He wanted the room to remember her feelings instead of his actions. Claire folded her hands in front of her. No, she said. I am becoming specific. Daniel looked down, hiding the beginning of a smile. Claire continued. The statement must confirm that my work during this negotiation was accurate, professional, and impartial. Grant laughed once. You expect me to certify impartiality after witnessing your personal contact with Mr. Caruso. Claire looked toward Vincent for the first time. He remained still. She turned back to Grant. What Mr. Caruso thinks of me is not evidence of how I performed my work. It affects perception. Perception is not performance. In a confidential negotiation, appearance matters. Yes. Claire nodded. That is why vague allegations are useful. They create an appearance no one can test. Grant opened his mouth. Claire continued before he could speak. If I mistranslated a sentence, identify it. If I advised one party, name the advice. If I withheld information, show the record. She let the silence answer. Then she said, if none of those things occurred, the complaint was unsupported. Grant's jaw tightened. That word carries legal implications. So did the complaint. Sophia spoke in Spanish. Mr. Mercer, send the statement. Claire interpreted the sentence into English. Grant looked at her. Sophia continued. Our company cannot defend an allegation with no stated act, especially after your office interfered with the interpreter assignment. We have not established that my office acted improperly. We have established enough. Grant's control began to fracture, not visibly enough for anyone outside the room to notice. Claire saw it in the way he straightened the edge of a paper that was already aligned. She saw it in the way his eyes moved toward the door. He was no longer directing the meeting. He was measuring exits. Grant opened his laptop. I will state that the concern has been resolved, Claire said, unsupported. He looked up. That is not the same thing. No. Claire glanced toward the highlighted word behind them. Neither was documented. Sophia's expression remained hard. Use unsupported. Grant began typing. The sound of the keys filled the room. Claire watched each sentence appear on the shared screen. Following review of the interpreting services provided by Claire Bennett during the Caruso Maritime and Altamira negotiations, no specific translation error has been identified. Claire waited. Grant added another sentence. Any concern regarding her neutrality is considered resolved. Claire shook her head, unsupported. Grant stopped typing. I have already agreed to issue a statement. You have agreed to avoid saying what the record shows. Vincent's fingers moved once against the table. Claire saw the effort it cost him to remain silent. Grant looked toward Daniel. Control your interpreter. The room changed. Vincent's gaze became cold enough to empty the air from it. Claire raised one hand without looking at him. Vincent did not speak. Claire faced Grant. I do not belong to Mr. Price. Grant's eyes moved to Vincent. Nor do I belong to Mr. Caruso. Her voice remained calm. I am here under a professional contract. You questioned that professionalism. I am answering. Sophia spoke before Grant could respond. Right unsupported. Grant returned to the keyboard. Any concern regarding Ms. Bennett's neutrality was unsupported by evidence of inaccurate, incomplete, or partial interpretation. Claire read the sentence. Add that no restriction should be placed on future assignments because of this matter. Grant stared at her. You are asking me to direct the agency's decisions. I am asking you to correct the effect of the allegation. Daniel added, the language can state that no professional restriction is warranted based on Mr. Mercer's review. Grant looked toward Sophia. She nodded once. He typed the final sentence. Based on the work reviewed, Ms. Bennett performed accurately, professionally, and impartially, and no limitation on future assignments is warranted. Grant stopped. Claire read the full statement. Send it directly to Crescent Global's compliance office. He attached the document. His hand remained above the keyboard. Vincent spoke quietly. Send it. Grant looked at him. For 1 second, Claire saw hatred without polish. Then Grant pressed the key. A soft notification sounded. The statement was gone. The room remained silent. Claire's phone vibrated less than a minute later. Rebecca's name appeared on the screen. Claire stepped away from the table and answered. Claire, we received a withdrawal. I know. It is unusually specific. It needed to be. Rebecca was quiet. Compliance is closing the review immediately, and my assignments, they will be restored in writing. Yes, all of them. Yes. Claire looked through the windows at the river. Will Crescent Global change how unsupported complaints against interpreters are handled? Rebecca hesitated. We will review the process. Send that in writing too. Another pause. Then Rebecca said, I will. Claire ended the call. When she returned to the table, Vincent looked at her. Is it done? The review is closed. He nodded once. There was no celebration in his expression, only relief he did not attempt to hide. The negotiation resumed. This time, every correction remained on the screen until both legal teams approved it. The missing word documented returned to the Spanish version. The commercial reasonableness clause was rewritten to create the same objective standard in both languages. The Brownsville Customs issue became a formal disclosure. Altamira accepted a warranty requiring immediate notice of any regulatory action. Both language versions were given equal authority. Claire interpreted each revision. Her voice remained steady. By late afternoon, the final contract lay in front of every representative. Sophia signed first. Vincent signed last. Grant added his name as counsel, though his hand moved more slowly than before. When the final page reached Claire, Daniel placed a copy beside her. Her handwritten corrections appeared throughout the agreement. Small marks, one added phrase, one restored word, one altered standard. Nothing dramatic on the page. Yet every change closed a door someone had tried to leave open. The meeting ended at 4:37. The Altamira executives gathered their documents. Sophia approached Claire and spoke in Spanish. Your work protected both sides today. Claire interpreted nothing. The conversation was private now. Thank you, she replied in Spanish. Sophia glanced toward Grant. It also revealed who was protecting only himself. Grant waited near the doors. After Sophia left, he approached Claire. Vincent remained at the far end of the room with Daniel and Marcus. Grant stopped beside the interpreter's station. You made certain I had no acceptable alternative. Claire closed her portfolio. You had the same choice I had. What choice was that remain in the room and answer for your work? Grant's expression hardened. Or leave and allow everyone else to decide what your absence meant. He looked toward Vincent. Be careful with her, Vincent answered from across the room. She does not require my supervision. Grant studied Claire one last time. No, he said quietly. I suppose she does not. Then he walked out. The doors closed behind him. Daniel collected the final documents. Marcus left to escort the Altamira delegation downstairs. Within minutes, the enormous conference room became quiet. Claire removed her headset. Her ears ached from wearing it for hours. Vincent stood beside the windows looking at the city below. Sunlight had finally broken through the storm clouds. It stretched across the black conference table and caught the edge of the contract between them. Claire placed the headset carefully on the table. Vincent turned. You were right. She looked at him. About what? If I had removed you, the accusation would have survived. Claire leaned against the back of the chair. Yes. You understood the room better than I did." His admission was so direct that she almost did not know how to answer. Does saying that hurt? Vincent considered the question, more than being shot. Claire stared at him. His face remained serious for 1 second. Then the corner of his mouth moved. The laugh escaped her before she could stop it. It was quiet at first, then warmer. The sound crossed the empty room where fear, accusation, and millions of dollars had spent 3 days fighting for control. Vincent watched her. For the first time since Claire had entered Rivermark Tower, the silence between them did not feel dangerous. It felt honest. For the first time since Claire had entered Rivermark Tower, the silence between them did not feel dangerous. It felt honest. Her laughter faded slowly. Vincent remained near the windows, one hand resting against the edge of the conference table. The afternoon light softened the hard lines of his face, but it did not make him look harmless. Claire was grateful for that. Harmless would have been a lie. The city below them was still recovering from the storm. Water shone along the streets. Traffic moved carefully through the intersections. The Mississippi carried broken branches and dark debris past the docks controlled by Vincent's company. For 3 days, Claire had watched entire rooms adjust to his presence. People lowered their voices when he entered. Attorneys measured every sentence before speaking. Security officers moved before he finished giving an order. Even Grant Mercer, for all his confidence, had watched Vincent with the attention of a man standing near a sleeping animal. Now the room was empty. There was no audience left for either of them. Claire placed her portfolio on the table. "Would you really have respected my decision if the legal strategy had failed?" Vincent looked at her. "Yes." The answer came too quickly. Claire tilted her head. "That sounded prepared. It was true." "That is not what I said." Vincent moved away from the windows. "What do you want me to say?" "The answer you did not give immediately." He stopped across from her. Claire waited. Vincent glanced toward the closed conference room doors as if the men who usually stood outside them might somehow answer for him. They did not. Finally, he said, "Before you stopped me, I would have handled Grant differently." "How you already know enough." "No, I know what I imagined. That was probably accurate." Claire studied his face. There was no pride in the admission. There was no shame either. Only fact. "What would you have done?" Vincent looked at the contract between them. "I would have found the thing he feared losing most. His client possibly, his license possibly, his family." Vincent's eyes lifted. No. Claire remembered how long he had paused in the hotel lobby when she made him promise that no one in Grant's family would be used. "You considered it. I considered pressure. That is not an answer." Vincent's jaw tightened. Claire did not retreat. He had agreed not to speak for her. She had never agreed to make the truth comfortable for him. After a moment, Vincent said, I would not have hurt his family, but you might have let him believe you would." "Yes." The answer settled between them. Claire looked down at her hands. She had spent the last 3 days surrounded by evidence, precise language, and carefully defined consequences. She could not pretend the man in front of her belonged to a simpler story. He had listened to her. He had also built a life in which men believed he was capable of destroying everything they loved. One restrained decision did not erase that. Vincent watched her expression change. "You asked for honesty. I did. You do not like it. I did not expect to." He moved closer to the table but did not sit. Claire looked toward the city. "Why did you listen to me?" "You were right. That usually does not stop powerful men." "No. Especially men who are accustomed to being feared." Vincent said nothing. Claire turned back. "You could have agreed in the hotel and still done whatever you wanted." "Yes." "You could have hidden it from me." "Yes." "You could have convinced yourself it was necessary." "Yes." "Then why did you not?" Vincent's gaze remained steady. "Because you would have known." Claire frowned. "How you would have looked at me differently." The answer was so quiet that she nearly missed its weight. Vincent continued, "I have spent most of my life accepting that people fear me. Some should, some do not have a choice. I stopped caring about the difference a long time ago." Claire listened. "But you looked at me as though I still had a choice," he said. "I did not want to take it from you." A strange pressure formed behind her ribs. "That is not the same as becoming a good man." "No. You are not going to tell me everything you have done was necessary. No. You are not going to say the rumors are all lies. Some are exaggerated. And the others? Vincent looked at her. They are not. Claire inhaled slowly. The honesty did not make him safer. It made the danger clearer. That was somehow worse and better at the same time. She walked toward the windows. Vincent gave her space. Below them, several cargo cranes stood against the pale sky. Their long metal arms reached over the river like silent machines waiting for orders. How much of this belongs to you? Claire asked. The building, the docks, the terminals, the people who move when you call. Vincent stood beside her, leaving several feet between them. Enough. That is not precise. You prefer precision. It prevents people from hiding inside vague words. Vincent looked toward the river. Caruso Maritime owns 2 terminals outright and controls access agreements at 3 others. We operate storage facilities, trucking contracts, and customs services across the Gulf. And the part people whisper about. He was silent for several seconds. My father built relationships outside the law. Relationships. Vincent gave her a brief look. You dislike that word. It is doing a lot of work. He financed businesses that banks would not touch. He collected debts when courts moved too slowly. He protected unions when companies tried to break them, then demanded loyalty in return. And violence. Yes. The answer did not waver. Claire folded her arms. What did you inherit? All of it. What did you keep? Vincent looked at the reflection of the river in the glass. More than you would approve of. That is not difficult. No. Are people still hurt because of your orders? He did not answer immediately. Claire felt the silence sharpen. Then he said, Sometimes people are stopped before they hurt others. That was not my question. I know. She waited. Vincent turned toward her. I have ordered things I would not describe to you as clean. Claire held his gaze. Recently, yes. The truth moved through her like cold water. She could have asked for details, names, dates, the shape of the violence. Part of her wanted to know everything. Another part understood that knowing everything would place her inside his world in a way she had not chosen. Claire looked back toward the river. Honesty does not make that disappear. I know. It may make me walk away. I know that too. His answer came without resistance. That surprised her more than anything else. Powerful men often claimed to respect choice until the choice was rejection. Vincent was not asking her to forgive him. He was standing beside her and accepting that she might leave. Claire turned. What happens if I do? His expression remained unreadable. You leave. That is all. What else should happen? You are Vincent Caruso, I am aware. People do not usually walk away from men like you without consequences. His eyes hardened, though not with anger toward her. If you choose to leave, no one follows you. No one contacts your agency. No assignment disappears. No door closes. Claire searched his face. You would let me go, yes. Would you want to know? The answer was immediate. Something inside her shifted. Not surrender, not trust, recognition. He wanted control. He was choosing not to use it. Claire looked at the chair where Grant had sat. Why did you stop the meeting? Vincent's gaze moved toward the doors. Marcus told me an unlisted interpreter had been allowed onto the floor. That explains the security concern. It does. It does not explain why you looked at me for so long. Vincent returned his attention to her. Claire felt suddenly exposed. She had faced Grant's accusations in front of an entire negotiation team without losing her voice. This question made her pulse move faster. Vincent walked to the table and rested both hands against its edge. Everyone in that room arrived prepared for me. Claire waited. Grant prepared charm. Daniel prepared legal answers. Marcus prepared for violence. The Altamira executives prepared caution. And me, you arrived soaked late and terrified. Claire frowned. That is not flattering. It is not meant to be. Good. You did not pretend the situation was under control. It was obviously not under control. You did not ask anyone to excuse you. I apologized. You apologized for being late. You did not ask to be treated as less capable. Claire remembered standing in the doorway, water dripping from her dress, wishing the floor would open beneath her. I thought you were about to destroy my career. You still walked toward the interpreter's chair. That was my job. Yes. Vincent's voice softened. That is why I stopped the meeting. Claire looked at him. Because I tried to sit down because you were afraid and kept moving. He glanced at the blue portfolio on the table. You entered a room full of people who had spent months preparing their advantages. You had a damaged shoe, a temporary badge, and notes you had written in the middle of the night. You noticed the notes. I notice everything. That sounds unhealthy. It has kept me alive. Claire almost smiled. Vincent continued. You arrived without a performance. I wanted to know whether that was real. And was it yes? How can you be sure? Because you had several opportunities to become someone else. Claire looked at him. You could have become grateful when I offered you money to leave. You could have become obedient when security escorted you. You could have become impressed when you learned who I was. His mouth shifted slightly. You did none of those things. I was impressed. Vincent raised one eyebrow. Mostly by the number of armed men. That is not the same. No. For a moment the tension between them loosened. Then Claire said, You still searched my background, yes. You still investigated me, yes. You still assumed I might be a weapon. I assume everyone might be a weapon. That must make dinner parties difficult. I do not attend many. I am not surprised. Vincent looked at her for a long moment. The room had darkened slightly as the sun moved behind a cloud. Claire became aware of how close they were. Not close enough to touch, close enough that she could see the pale scar near his temple and the faint exhaustion beneath his eyes. He had not slept. Neither had she. The awareness moved between them quietly. Vincent straightened. The contract is complete. Claire nodded. My assignment officially ended when the final document was signed. 9 minutes ago. Claire looked toward the wall clock. You counted. Yes. Why his eyes remained on hers? Because I wanted to ask you something when you were no longer working for me. Claire's heartbeat changed. You were never my employer. Close enough. What do you want to ask? Vincent's voice remained calm. Have dinner with me. Claire said nothing. Outside the windows, a boat moved slowly along the river. Vincent waited. He did not fill the silence with persuasion. He did not remind her that he had helped restore her career. He did not describe the restaurants he could close for the evening or the view from a private dining room. He simply waited for her answer. Claire studied him. Not in a restaurant you own. That removes several strong options. Then you will have to adapt. No private room. Agreed. No security at the table. They will remain nearby. 1 block away. Half a block. Claire crossed her arms. 1, 3/4. She tried not to smile. You negotiate badly. I signed the contract. After 3 days, then I negotiate patiently. Claire considered the offer. You will not send a car to my apartment. I can send one nearby. No. You intend to take the streetcar after yesterday. The storm has passed. Your car is still being repaired. How do you know that Vincent paused? Claire's expression changed. Did you investigate my car? Marcus reviewed the transportation problem. That was not necessary. It was related to the security review. Do you know the name of my mechanic? No. She studied him. Vincent added Marcus might. That is exactly the problem. I will tell him to delete it. Claire held his gaze. Ask him to delete anything unrelated to this contract. I will. Ask, not order. Vincent looked almost offended. He works for me. Then order him. The corner of his mouth moved. Claire looked away before he saw her smile. Where, he asked. I will choose. When tonight? What time I will send it? Vincent nodded once. Claire picked up her portfolio. He moved toward the conference room doors and opened one for her. No security officers stood directly outside. Marcus waited near the elevators with Daniel. Daniel looked from Claire to Vincent and understood something had changed. He was wise enough not to mention it. Claire walked toward the elevator. Vincent followed several steps behind. At the doors, he said, I can have a driver take you home. I know, you are refusing. Yes, because you want the choice. Yes. The elevator arrived. Claire stepped inside. Vincent remained in the corridor. Send the address, he said. I will. If the neighborhood is unsafe, I will still choose it. If there is no parking, you have a driver. If the food is terrible. Claire pressed the lobby button. You will survive. The doors began to close. Vincent looked at her through the narrowing space. Claire. She met his eyes. Thank you for staying in the room. The doors closed before she could answer. Claire rode the elevator alone. For the first time in 3 days, no armed man stood beside her. No one questioned where she was going. No one controlled which door she used. When she stepped into the lobby, the city beyond the glass was bright. The storm clouds had broken apart over the river. Claire walked outside. She heard the tower door open behind her. Vincent stood beneath the awning. A black car waited at the curb. He did not call her back. He did not tell Marcus to follow. He simply watched as she crossed the street and walked toward the streetcar stop. At the corner, Claire looked over her shoulder. Vincent was still there, watching her leave, allowing her to. That evening, Claire stood in front of her bedroom mirror and changed clothes 3 times. The first dress was black and elegant. It looked like something chosen to impress a man accustomed to private dining rooms and expensive wine. She removed it. The second outfit was casual enough to appear careless. That felt like another kind of performance. She removed that, too. The third dress was dark green, simple, soft against her skin. She had bought it months earlier and never found a reason to wear it. Claire looked at herself in the mirror. She liked the woman looking back. That was reason enough. At 7:05, she sent Vincent an address in the Bywater neighborhood. The restaurant was a small Cuban Creole cafe owned by a family Claire had known for years. It had 12 tables, bright yellow walls, handwritten specials, and no private dining room. Vincent replied less than a minute later. 7:30. No complaint, no alternative, no attempt to move the dinner into a building he controlled. Claire arrived 4 minutes early. Vincent was already outside. He wore dark trousers, a black shirt, and a charcoal coat. No tie, no visible weapon. Claire looked across the street. A black sedan was parked almost exactly 3/4 of a block away. "You measure distance generously," she said. Traffic changed the calculation. "There is no traffic. A delivery truck stopped near the corner. You negotiated the location after I left. I respected the agreement in spirit." Claire looked at him. "That is the language people use when they violate the wording." Vincent glanced toward the car. It moved another quarter block. Claire nodded. Better. He opened the restaurant door. Warm air moved over them, carrying the smell of garlic coffee, roasted pork, and fried plantains. Conversations continued when Vincent entered. No one stopped eating. No one stood. No one lowered a voice. No one touched an earpiece or reached beneath a jacket. For the first time since Claire had met him, Vincent Caruso walked into a room that did not change because he was there. The hostess approached with 2 menus. She smiled at Claire. Table for 2. Claire looked at Vincent. He waited, not because he lacked an answer, because it was hers to give. "Yes," Claire said. The hostess led them toward a small table beside the window. Claire walked first. Vincent followed. Not because she belonged to him, not because he had shut down a meeting when she entered, not because he had protected her name. He followed because she had chosen the restaurant, chosen the distance, chosen the table, and chosen to let him enter her evening. They sat across from each other. Vincent opened the single-page menu. "What do you recommend?" Claire rested her hands on the table. "For once, you will have to trust the interpreter." Vincent looked at her across a room he did not own. His expression softened. "I already do."